Hey folks, Dave Temple here. As you know, my podcast is all about talking to the best thriller writers in the world. Now, while I don't put myself in that category of the best, I've certainly got my hat now in the ring. And after nearly 3 years of hosting this podcast, I think it's time to toot my own horn, if you will. So with that, I'm offering my thriller, The Poser, for sale all this month. It stars Detective Pat Norelli, a rookie cop working the overnight beat in Hollywood when one of the town's biggest stars is found dead in her Hollywood Hills home only hours after winning an Oscar. Beloved by her fans, Pat thinks someone wants this star dead and sees this as a way to forge her own path and get the promotion she craves. I'm proud of the response I've gotten from fans, and I'm confident you're going to like The Poser. So for the rest of this month, you can get the ebook for only $5 or the paperback for $14. Since I do this weekly podcast as a free service, perhaps you'd consider this as a way to help out a fellow thriller writer. There are two ways to reach the link. First, you can go to davidtemplebooks.com, scroll down to see The Poser, click, and you're on your way. Or head over to Amazon. You can find it there. Again, davidtemplebooks.com or Amazon. Thanks in advance for your support. And now, on with the show. On today's 150th episode of The Thriller Zone, it is my distinct pleasure to welcome the multi-award-winning author Lou Berney and his latest thriller, Dark Ride. Lou is one of those authors I've admired for a long time, and I'd be lying if I said I wasn't beyond stoked to have him on the show. So, without any further ado, let's get to it. Please welcome my friend and yours, Lou Berney, to The Thriller Zone. Well, let's just shoot out of the gate with a great big hello and welcome to The Thriller Zone, Lou Berney.
It's great to be here, David.
It was so delightful seeing you finally face-to-face at BoucherCon.
Yeah, you're taller than I expected. You're over 7 feet tall, which you don't get from the video at all.
It's so funny. How many times did you say to yourself as you were meeting people, "Oh, you're taller, you're shorter, you're younger"? You know, it was so odd to catch all that.
It is. It is fun. It's fun to meet people in person you've been corresponding with for some time.
And I'm thinking back to the first time we corresponded. I think it had to do with it had to be November Road. You weren't on the show, but we talked about it, and I thought, man, one day I want to get this cat on the show, and the planets aligned, and here we are.
I know. It's really great to be here. I really appreciate the opportunity, so thanks.
I saw your, and I jumped on it immediately on Twitter, aka X, and I saw your new trailer that Story Factory just dropped. Let's take a look at it right now.
Sometimes the person you least expect is just the hero you need. Dark Ride by Lou Berney, coming September 19th. Order now.
That's pretty smoking.
Yeah, the Story Factory, that's my agency, Shane Salerno and Story Factory. They do some terrific trailers, and it's always just blows my mind to see, like, that's my book. I can't even believe it.
You know, it's so funny. First of all, you're in a class all your own. I mean, you have an entourage of co-conspirators there at the Story Factory that is just mind-blowing. Don Winslow, T.J. Newman, Meg Gardner. I mean, the list goes on, and it's a clear indication of your magnificent talent that got you there.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. I'm not sure that's true, but there is a great group of people at the Story Factory. I mean, it's kind of an odd mix of people, but it all comes back to sort of like a shared taste in books and reading and authors. And we're all, pretty good friends too, which is pretty rare for an agency sort of thing.
And that same mindset, you probably found this, Lou, at BoucherCon, you've seen it at Thriller Fest, is this community, you hear us talk about it all the time, this community is unlike many others. You know, you get into Hollywood and the competition's a little fierce, but this community's just nothing but open arms.
No, it was so weird because I'd been in academia, I'd been in Hollywood, and so I just sort of expected the crime community to be the same, and it's nothing like that. There's such a supportive vibe, and it's sincere. At first, I was like, "Wait, is this just a way to get closer to me to stab me?" But no, it's really sincere. People at the top of the ladder are always helping people lower down, and everyone, kind of rooting for everyone else, and it's such a refreshing and kind of necessary thing, I think, for writers.
Another thing, not to drop names, but Lee Goldberg was walking around like he was everybody's pal. And I at first, because I bumped into him, I said, Lee, I mean, you're Lee Goldberg, for crying out loud. And he goes, dude, I love hanging out with people and I love this event. And it was so cool to just hang out with he and his brother. It's amazing.
I know. It's just crazy the people you bump into who are these huge names, sell millions of books, and they're just like hanging out at the bar with everyone else and the nicest people you could possibly imagine talking shop.
Yeah. Well, speaking of talking shop, this book right here, Dark Ride, is a smoking little baby.
Thank you.
Yeah, smoking little baby works, doesn't it?
Well, I don't know. I feel like it's a disturbing image, but we'll go with it.
Hey, Daddy. We're gonna get to this in a second because I have plenty to talk about. But I do want to back up a little bit for those folks who are don't know Lou or maybe getting brand new introduced to Lou, because this podcast is always growing. We're always getting new listeners and viewers all the time. He wrote a book called November Road, which, I mean, when you can win the Hammett, the Steel Dagger, the Beret, the McCavity, and Anthony Awards, you know you've really accomplished something. And I got to ask you before I go on, Lou, did you have any idea that that book was going to make that big of an impact on that big of an audience?
No, not at all. I mean, we write our books alone and in solitary confinement, essentially. And so you get to know the characters and you love the story, but I had no idea it would have that connection with readers. I mean, it was such a wonderful experience to have people come up to me and talk about the characters as if they knew them too. And there's just it never gets old, that feeling. So it was a huge surprise, and but just a wonderful surprise too.
And as though that's not enough, it was named Book of the Year by the Washington Post, the Boston Globe, Newsweek, and LitHub. So, folks, if you hadn't had a chance to read it, and I know we're talking about Dark Ride, and we're going to talk about this, but November Road, that is a book you must have in your library, if I may.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I agree. And I would say even like 2 or 3 copies in your library would probably be just safe in case one gets waterlogged or something with your tears.
Yeah. And I think it wouldn't be bad to have a hardback, because you want to save that for your award section, and then a paperback in case it gets wrinkled, you know.
Yes. I didn't want to say that, so thank you for chipping it, Dave.
And how about the one that got everybody's attention, or a lot of folks in the mainstream, which was The Long and Far Away Gone, another Edgar Anthony Barry McCavity winner. I mean, Lou, and it's so hard to put you on the spot like this because you're such a humble, down-to-earth guy, and you don't really, you're not that big guy that's always talking about himself. But I mean, when I ask you specifically, what is it like to win that many prestigious awards? Besides, pretty cool, Dave. I mean, how does that feel, and how long had you been working perhaps even toward that goal?
Well, it's ridiculous, you know. I mean, there's so many incredibly good crime novelists out there right now. I mean, it's a true golden age for crime thriller fiction, and so like to win these awards makes me embarrassed at some degree because there's so many great writers and so many great books. But at the same time, it's just everything you do dream about, like the idea that you're getting this kind of acclaim and getting this kind of readership. So like it's incredible, but I'm also like very much aware of how many other great books there are out there.
And speaking to that point, the competition is so fierce. And I have said on the show before, many episodes back, that I remember the very first time, or this particular summer, I walked into a Barnes and Noble, as many of us do, right there in the section. And you're looking at all these hundreds of thousands of books, top 10, top 20, et cetera. And if you allow yourself to get caught in that space of, how can I ever do this? How can I ever compete with this number of books and this? You could really go slightly mad, couldn't you, Lou?
Yeah, it's tough. Like I have so many good friends who are great writers. Like I was at BoucherCon and I ran into Lee Goldberg's brother Todd, who's got a new book coming out, I think a week before mine. And I remember reading Todd's last collection of stories and just hating him. Like it was so good. I was like, oh, screw you, Todd Goldberg. But he's like my good friend. And so it's like you just got to accept that, the rising tide lifts all boats in a way. And the better the crime fiction, the better for everybody. And I know as a reader, like I love that you look at September, the releases this month, it's just incredibly humbling. And you're just like, wow, I'm just glad to be in this mix at all.
I was talking to Don Winslow, another one of your buddies in the Shane in the Story Factory, and he was talking about Richard Rousseau, his latest book, and he said he was sitting down to read it, and he said to himself, "Oh, why did I even get into this business? This is ridiculous. I suck." And I thought, Don, you're Don Winslow. You've done pretty good. I mean, do you ever have feelings like that when you are talking about that competition?
The I suck feeling yeah, that's constant. I think for almost any writer, if you're not constantly telling yourself I suck, you're probably not doing the job right. So, I mean, I think that's where you get better is to always want to do better. And I had that experience. I read what was the book I read? Tess Gunty's The Rabbit Hutch, which won the National Book Award last year, I think. I just read it and I was like, oh man, I just wanted to give up. It was so good. But then a few minutes later, I wanted to go straight to the keyboard and like start typing. So I think it knocks you down and then brings you up in the same way at the same time.
I was asking Bob Dugoni once, I'm like, we were talking about his books coming out, and he was talking about, oh my God, David, seriously, every single time I practically just hurl myself silly because I'm worried that no one will like my book. And I'm like, dude, last time I checked, you have like 20 or 30 hits behind you. Are you kidding me? He goes, no, every single solitary book. And I don't know what that is, Lou. I don't get it. Is it, do we have that imposter syndrome? Do we always feel like nothing we do is good enough? Not to be on the couch, but.
No, it's a good question. It's like, athletes have it come out in a very different way. They like great athletes just assume every shot's going to go in. That's the mindset of a great basketball player or a baseball player. Every ball he's going to hit out of the park. And for writers, it's different somehow. And somehow it's because we're doing something completely original each time with each book. I think that it's unknown territory. It's not territory we've been over before. And so you're just sort of setting out, like you write one book and you're like, wow, I'm a pretty good plumber. I learned to plumb. And then the next book's like, oh, wow, now I've got to land a plane. And it doesn't match up. So you're always in this state of terror and dread. But I think it makes you better.
Do you all of your books are standalones, correct?
I have two books that are in a series. My first two novels, Gut Shot Straight and Whiplash River, are part of a series. But since then, I've just been writing standalones, which I'm much more, I guess I'm just much more comfortable with. I don't have to think about what happens afterwards.
Because that was my next question. Would you find comfort in knowing what's always going to, you've got one protagonist, you fleshed him out, you spent time with him or her, and you know exactly who it is, where they're going. All you have to do is put them in a different situation. And that's not something you're a big fan of? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I like to read series books, and writing them, it was enjoyable. Like I love the characters, so I love coming back to them. But like my instinct or my bent is toward something new every time and something that kind of like I haven't seen before. And so that sort of steers me a little bit away from the series book, I think.
Does your wife say, I'm trying to think of who I spoke to recently, and they were talking about, I'm always saying it was Kyle Mills, and he said, what about this topic about we're feeling that we suck? He goes, yeah, my wife says to me, oh, here comes Kyle. He's coming down the hall. He's going to hate this book. He's going to throw things. And then at the end, when people start liking it, he's going to go, oh, that really wasn't that bad. Do you have any kind of a similar story?
Yeah, I think my wife, she is aware of my process, and she kind of sees it more clearly than I do when I'm in the middle of it. So she's great at saying, shut up, stop whining, it's going to be fine. Um, uh, but again, sometimes it's not fine. That's the truth of writing fiction. If you're doing something different every time, sometimes you're going to fail, but that's again just part of the price of doing something original and cool, and you have to accept that.
And speaking of original and cool, because I'm a crack up former radio guy, I would be remiss if I did not make a point of commenting on the tall fella over your right shoulder. For those just listening, there is tell me who that is standing next to the globe.
He doesn't have a name, Dave. I don't name my art. I got that in Mexico City we were in Mexico City, and he was actually broken. And so he was like half price, and we just felt kind of bad for him, and we stitched him back together. He's still missing his fingers. So it's a type of Mexican. I can't remember the name of it. It's sort of a part of their folk art culture.
Okay. All right. Well, I had to poke.
You had to ask. Yeah.
All right.
Dave. I'm going to name him Dave from now on. It's Dave.
Fingerless Dave.
Fingerless Dave. I like that. That sounds like that's a character in a noir crime novel.
It was late night when Fingerless Dave walked into the room.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to start with this. I do want to get your elevator pitch, so I know you've got one, so I want to hear that. But here's something that I am going to come right out of the gate with. I saw this cover, first of all, a delicious cover.
Thank you. That's Story Factory, I believe. We came up with that.
It's smoking. It does lead you to believe one thing, which is certainly good. No, everybody loves a little red herring among the best of us. But it was one of the most enjoyable and surprising reads. And I walked away. My wife always comes in, right around the end of the read. You met Tammy.
Yeah, I like her much better than you. But I like you a lot, but Tammy's the best.
Yeah, I hear that a lot. Thank you. Sure. She goes, "What did you think about Lou's book?" And I said, "You know what? It was surprisingly good, just surprising." And before I get off of that word, because I will be
wait. Can I just stop you for a second there? You just called my novel surprisingly good, which is the greatest backhand compliment ever. I just want to point that out for the people at home. I'm going to put that blurb on there. Surprisingly good. Actually, just add an actually to it, and we're in business, I think. Surprisingly good, actually. I'm firing my publicist after this. This is crazy. Surprisingly good.
Oh, my God. I am sweating bullets. I didn't mean to quite come out that way. What I mean is watch me backpedal now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not surprised at your talent because it's magnificent, Mr. Berney.
Thank you.
But I think I was expecting something really, truly dark, and it is dark. But boy, here's what it is, and I'm going to get to your elevator pitch because why it impacted me so much. I have 2 grandkids pretty close to the center of this story, and the minute I started reading, I put my grandkids, Jack and Allison, in the middle of that story, and it snapped my heart in two, and then I couldn't be any more in if I tried.
I'd love to hear that. That's fantastic. And I mean, I have 7 great nephews and nieces between the ages of 12 and 3 weeks old. So for me, writing about kids is just, there's so much a part of my life. They all live within a mile or 2 of me, and we're always around them. And so it's something that came organically to me to write about that age of kids and kids in general. And like with kids, I mean, I think you bring up a really great point, like Dark Ride. And to me, it was always from the beginning, I knew it was going to be dark, but I also wanted it to be a ride, in the sense of kind of some light in there as well. And sort of balancing darkness and lightness has always been something that's important to me, both in what I write and what I read. I love kind of things that are more complex and not just sort of one tone or one color.
Well, mission accomplished, because it pulls you in. And go ahead and give me the elevator pitch now so that I know exactly what bounds I can step in and out of as we go forward.
I guess my elevator pitch is, the novel is about a 21-year-old stoner slacker guy who's just really drifting through life, putting out zero effort. And he happens to cross two kids who he can tell are being hurt by somebody, and no one will listen to him. No one will take over the case from him. So he has to find it within himself to figure out what's going on and help save these kids. And again, he's the most unlikely, least prepared person to do this, but he's the only one who can do it. So he has to do it.
Unlikely hero. And the ending took my breath away. I mean, I don't remember. I can very rarely say how many times my breath was taken away. And it's one of those endings that you get to live with for a while, and you get to kind of stir the pot and decide how you want things to happen. But
thanks.
Yeah, just powerful, Lou, on so many levels, because it isn't just a thrill ride. It's a bit of a mirror to society, to the way how the machine handles. Oh, we're too busy. Oh, someone else will take care of it. It's kind of that underlying thought of someone else's problem. I'm too busy living my boring life.
Right. It's really easy to say like, oh, I'll let someone else deal with this situation. And, when the main character goes to report it to Child Protective Services, and it's not exaggerated at all. Like it's incredible, like how underfunded and overworked and overburdened every agency is. And so it's just sort of like, if you get caught in that process, if you get lost in that shuffle, you're probably not coming out of it a lot of the time. And so I feel like, that's something I try to remind myself every day is like, I need to be the one who's responsible when I see something, when I can be of help and not just assume someone else will do it. And I think that's something that, it's easy to lose that in this era of iPhones where you're just lost in your phone, and it's easy to think, oh, well, someone else will deal with that.
And the main character's name is Hardly, which is so good. Hardy, of course, nicknamed Hardly, but the stoner aspect was so precisely captured. And not that you did.
Yeah, I mean, I've been around that. No, I mean, I guess like one of the things that helped me a lot was writing I write in coffee shops a lot. So I'm around a lot of young baristas, and I'm not suggesting their drug habits or anything like that, but I'm just saying like that sort of job, that sort of person who can be kind of drifting at that point in their life. I'm around them a lot, so I talk to them and I see them. And then it's also just going back, like, I'm sure you, Dave, we go back to our own, youth, and you just remember how kind of adrift you can be when you're 20 or 21, and how nothing's figured out, like, and everything seems overwhelming. I think it's even worse today. Like, oh my gosh, for a 21-year-old today, like college is like so much more expensive than it used to be when we were kids. And so it's just, it's a combination of personal experience and also just sort of like talking to people.
And to be a scare actor in a haunted house park, I mean, that is so original.
I know. I had no idea. I can't remember how I came up with that. But I did some research on that, which was fun. Like, and I tried to get it right, but then I just made some stuff up. I remember hearing Harlan Coben one time at a BoucherCon, I think, on a panel, and he's saying like, yeah, sometimes I research, but usually I just make shit up, and I love that, and so that's kind of the scare zone I would create if I was in charge.
Yeah, and I love the fact that these guys, take their job kind of seriously. I mean, we're actors here. We're really dialing this in, and yet they fumble through all of it all. Well, back to what people are saying. Don Winslow, we referred to earlier, calls it remarkable. TJ Newman calls it brilliant. Lisa Unger says breathless. Kent Krueger calls it dynamite. S.A. Cosby says it's your best work yet. And of course, not that I've written like these guys, but I had to put in my 2 cents, and I call it surprising and moving. However, not surprisingly good, but just surprising because it really grabs you.
I appreciate that. Yeah. No, thank you. Yeah. That means a lot. Yeah.
The first person aspect of it too, it isn't always easy to pull that off and to make it so engaging, so that you get to be inside his mind and see the world through his eyes, and then still observe all of the characters around him. I'm trying to think of your other books. Were they weren't all? No, This
I
is
hadn't
new.
written first person in like probably 30 years. This is the first time I've written first person in a long, long time. And I thought this book had to be first person because the main character starts out so clueless that if it was in a sort of a distance perspective, you're going to be laughing at him and just thinking he's ridiculous. You had to be in his mind to sort of understand how hard he's trying. So I knew it had to be first person, but getting that voice right was really tough because, as you know, like I could probably recreate a 21-year-old's voice perfectly if I wanted to, like with all the slang and everything. But that would then call attention to itself in a way that would disrupt the story. So I had to find this middle ground of making him seem authentic and seem young, but without kind of going overboard. And that's always, I think, the challenge with first person when you're writing about someone from a very specific culture or time period or a demographic.
And the characters around him, it's just a wide variety of, what's the phrase? Broken dolls kind of.
Oh yeah, that's good. Yeah. Yeah, I didn't think of that, but that's kind of true. Yeah.
And the mother of the children who's in trouble is so circumspect of the situation, and yet you feel scared for her, sorry for her, all simultaneously. But my favorite part of the whole story is how this unwitting guy becomes this hero. He's first a hero in his mind, and then he really is the hero. Where did that idea come from? Not the idea of the book, but that power of hero in a world where everybody thinks they're a hero. They're all pretending to be heroes. Where did that come from?
I'm not sure exactly. That's a good question. I mean, I think that's an idea that's interesting to me is it's always interesting to me is can you become something more than you think you are? And partly it comes from being a writer, I think. As we were talking about earlier, I think I feel like when it works well, my writing is smarter than me. And I mean, I think you kind of understand that because like only writers can really understand that, I think, because you'll write something on the page and you're like, oh yeah, that's better than anything I could have thought up. But like it came out of you somehow. And so there's this interesting kind of potential that gets expressed when you're writing or probably doing anything creatively that isn't there when you're just sort of trying to summon it. And so I kind of wanted to see what this character was. An interesting question. Like till the very end, I didn't know what was going to happen. I just wanted to see like, it's in play. Is he really going to be a hero or not? Like he thinks he can be one and he believes in it, but I'm not sure that's necessarily true or not.
Yeah, that ending is so spectacular. It's worth the price of admission. I mean, Jiminy.
Or a couple of prices of admission. Just remember 2 books, probably.
I'm thinking 3, hardback and 2
but thank you, yeah.
papers. Yeah. I want to circle back to something when, and you mentioned your agent, Shane Solari. I want to go back to when you were first starting out and what it felt like, what the situation was when you got discovered by somebody who's got a pretty prolific track record. And I know he doesn't, he's a pretty humble guy and he likes to stay behind the curtain. And so I don't want to draw too much spotlight on him, but he knows how to, when he sees talent, he knows it and he grabs it. So how did that come about? How did you get discovered by this guy? Because it went boom fast.
Yeah, what happened was this is about 8 years ago, I think now. I got a message from Don Winslow on Twitter, a DM, and he's like, hey, I don't know if you have an agent or what your agent situation is, but my agent really likes your stuff. And I was blown away to get a message from Don Winslow, who I've been a huge fan of for a long time. And so, but it just so happened like a week after, like almost literally a week after my agent at the time retired. So I was like, yeah, I do need an agent. And I remember getting on the phone with Shane. I was in Tulsa for an event, Tulsa, Oklahoma. And I got on the phone with him and we just talked for like an hour. And just it clicked that he was passionate about books. He was passionate about writers. He wasn't doing this for the money. He wasn't doing it for the fame. He was doing it because he loved the work itself and wanted it to see a bigger audience. And to me, you're going to get no pure expression of the job than that.
You know, it's funny that when you think about the people who come into your life that affect you and you think, oh, we're going to use Don for an example. Oh, my goodness, if I could, Don Winslow. As I talk to writers through the past 2.5 years, everyone feels similarly. They hold everyone else in such high regard. And it's circling back to that comment about what a great community this is that we're all really just chasing our passion. We're just telling great stories and chasing that drive within us that we know that it's either going to hit or miss. And it might be a whole lot of mediocrity in the middle. But what keeps you going? What's that thing that I want to say? What's your secret sauce? Because everything you write turns to gold. And I know that sounds a little foo-foo, but it really is. I mean, each story is so significantly original. That's the key about you, Lou, and that's the thing I wanted to make sure I walk away having said is that you have such an incredible grasp of originality, and that's magnificent.
Oh, that means a lot. I mean, that's exactly what I'm trying to do. Like, as a reader and as a writer both, I want to do something new. And it's not like sort of necessarily even out of choice. It's just like that's what feels right to me. And so my secret is failure. Like, I fail a lot. Like, I mean, I do not kind of write a book quickly. I do not write it easily. And I take a lot of wrong turns and dead ends and fall off cliffs constantly. And so, I mean, I think that's just part of my process. I've learned to accept that. So, I mean, to me, it's encouraging to know that you don't have to get it right every time. You can do it again then, that's the whole power of revision and starting over sometimes. So that's what I love about writing is that you can crack at it until you get it right. And then that's a great feeling when that rock suddenly splits and the statue presents itself.
Yeah. And that is something I wanted to make sure I questioned. In between November Road and now Dark Ride, it's been how many years?
Well, it was about 4 years in between when I wrote them. It's been about 5 years since publication.
And that, I talk to a lot of guys who, I'm working hard to put out one every year. There's some people I'm putting out 2 a year. And I think to myself, how does that happen? When you're really going for, and I want to make sure I say this specifically so don't step on toes or get somebody throw shit in my face. But, to be completely original, do something outside the norm, have it so compelling as this story, you can't do that 2 or 3 times a year. And if you can, I want to meet you. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I think everybody does it differently and everyone has a different process. And I just know for me, it involves a lot of trial and error. Like, I don't have a recipe for how to create a great character. Like, I got some ideas about it and, I can give some guidelines, but in general, it's like, I got to write a scene. And if the character starts to come alive in some certain way, I follow that. Or if it lies there on the slab dead on arrival, I got to start over. So a lot of trial and error. And that takes, for me at least, it takes a little bit of extra time, which I don't love, but I've accepted it now. Well,
like the old saying goes, if it works, if the shoe fits, wear it. What is one thing that when people meet you, they're so surprised to learn about you that they've told you about anyway?
People tend to be surprised that I was a very good baseball player in high school, that I was a high school baseball player. People look at me and like, really? Which makes me, I don't know what they think I was doing in high school, but I was a very good baseball player in high school. Boring, right? I don't know.
No. But I'm sitting here trying to imagine that conversation. Bob walks up to you, so Lou, blah, 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 baseball. Really? You?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. Some people, I see it. I don't know. I can't think of anything better than that. Yeah. Killed a man once with my bare hands. That surprises a few people, but is that what you were looking for? That sort of thing?
Okay.
Yeah. Self-defense. Sure. Not convicted. No, I'm kidding about that. I just realized this is going to be recorded.
Yeah.
All right. I was joking. Federal Bureau of Investigation.
Yeah. Oh my God. Well, Lou, this book is just flat out amazing. It is up there in the stack that I say everyone has to read this book. And since you're buying 3 copies, a hardback and 2 papers, one to thumb through over and again, and one to share with a friend, Go ahead and you can pre-order now. And I know it drops. This show will drop on Monday, the day before your book drops. So
great.
We're going to do plenty of talking about pre-ordering it. But before we wrap, I always ask all my authors their very favorite piece of writing advice. And we've got a lot of folks who listen. There are up-and-coming writers. They're striving writers. There's some very seasoned writers. I had a couple of guys recently say, and one of them stopped me at Bauschkan and says, dude, it's so cool. I love that advice at the end of the show. I always, I think I've really mastered it. And then I hear somebody give a piece of advice. I'm like, oh, yeah, that is so true. It's so key. And I want to hear Lou Berney's best piece of writing advice.
Yeah, it is cool. I love to hear that too from other, what writers are thinking. I guess my one big piece of advice would be, don't trust anyone who tells you there's only one way to write. There's only one way to do it. There's a way for everybody. Everybody has their own way, and you would just have to find that.
And you know what? You could probably go back to the greats who have left us much too early and ask them the same thing. And I bet you a lot of those guys would say similarly. And being brought up the way that I was in a household with lots of rules, with a pastor for a father, and everything was fit in a box and do it this way and don't ask why and just keep moving. I grew up with this incessant need to break as many rules as I pretty much could. So it has served me well because I live by that motto. So when I heard it, it resonates very beautifully with me, Lou. Yeah.
Good to hear. Good to hear.
Well, folks, if you'd like to learn more about Lou and, of course, to order your copy today, go to louberney.com, LOUBERNEY.com. And if you saw him at BoucherCon, I know I saw photos of you with a lot of folks. A lot of people really admire you, Lou. I can't tell you how many people I spoke with. They said, did you know that Lou is here? And I'm like, yeah, I did. I just spoke to him. He touched my shirt.
I don't believe I touched your shirt. And remember, I was surprisingly good, right? Surprisingly good. Never going to forget that, Dave. 20 years from now, hold it against you.
Well, I certainly deserve that, Lou.
I'm kidding.
But seriously, I love this book. I read it in two sittings because I couldn't put it down because I wanted, once you get inside Hartley's head, it's a cross between you can't wait to see what he's up next, and you simultaneously cheer for him because you want him to win so bad because he's just trying to do something good.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate that.
All right. Well, Lou, is there anything else we have not covered? I want to be sure that I didn't take too much of your time because I know it's a big day for you.
This was great. I really appreciate it, and it was a really fun conversation. So thanks for having me on.
Thanks again, Lou. What a pleasure indeed. Now, folks, let me tee you up to next week's guest. The original homicide hunter, Detective Joe Kenda, joins us to talk about his new and very first fiction thriller, All Is Not Forgiven. It promises to be, as always, a great time. That's next Monday. And until then, thanks for listening. Be sure to subscribe to our YT channel at youtube.com/thethrillerzone. And as always, visit our website at thethrillerzone.com. Lastly, follow us on X at thethrillerzone. I'm David Temple, your host, and I'll see you next time on another edition of The Thriller Zone.
Your front row seat to the best.